What about the territory, Professor Li? We understand the Chinese side said very clearly, the Xisha Island, in which the Zhongwei Island is located, around which the dispute happened between China and Vietnam, is a territory that has not been disputed between China and Vietnam. It has been a territory claimed by China in history, including in modern history. Only there is territory disputes of the Nansha Island, which is a totally different story. So, what does it say? The recent incidents and clashes between the Chinese and Vietnamese side around the Xisha Island, which has not been disputed, the territory, has been claimed by China since the very beginning. What does it say about the nature of the recent incident? And what does it say about the escalating of tensions in the South China Sea?
Well, first of all, I was very much appalled by, the sort of, harassment of the operating of the, oil rigs, in the Xisha area. You're quite right. The Xisha Islands, were part of Chinese territory since time immemorial. As a lawyer, if we say, evidence, we can come up with, a tremendous evidence to prove that, a fact. So let's just take one example. 1958, on September 4th, Chinese government made declaration on the Chinese territorial sea. That official statement, made it very clear both Xisha Islands, Nansha Islands, part of the Chinese territories. They have territorial seas. And that Chinese formal official declaration was immediately followed by Vietnamese diplomatic note sent by then the Premier of Vietnam, Mr. Phan Văn Thong, saying that the Vietnamese government support and recognize the Chinese position over the legal status of this island, this territories, territorial waters. And that was, further followed by a diplomatic note by an official, responsible official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Vietnam, saying the fact that Xisha Islands belong to China has been substantiated by both history and law.
So what are you saying right now? So you're saying, if already recognized in history, if already agreed between the two sides in history back in the year 1958, should there be disputes now?
No, but they're backing out from their promises, from what they said in 1958. And in international law, we have a principle of estoppel. That as a legal bar to prevent this kind of things from happening. I think up until the mid of 1970s, this position, was, there intact. But, after mid of 1970s, the Vietnamese government began to change their position, their attitude. And as I said, this is, not permitted by international law.
On the other hand, Professor Jia, what do you think about China's actions operating near the Zhongwei Island, which is in the Xisha Islands? Is it legal according to some of the documents or information that you have gathered? And should that be violated by the Vietnamese side?
I look at the politics of international law. And frankly speaking, I would think for a political scientist, the easy claim based the Vietnamese position, which is based on, came after the Chinese declaration in 1958 and after Vietnamese Prime Minister of the day accepted Chinese positions. So it's very much a competition of public opinion on the international stage. Politicians today all talk about respect for rule of law, that all talk about law of the sea, but they are referring to different tiny pieces of the law, and they, of course with a twisted interpretation. But let's face it, the feature where the operation is so much closer to a island that's held by China. And so I don't quite see that. I think fair-minded people among the rank and file, those who don't get to talk like us do, would see much of a problem with the Chinese operation, and they would really support the Vietnamese position. It's so much further away.
Let me just follow up a little bit. We see China has this territorial disputes with some of the countries in the region. For example, with Vietnam, with the Philippines, with Japan, and some also other countries, minor issues. Therefore, the question is, if a country is having territorial disputes with quite a number of others, does it necessarily mean this specific country is lack of reasoning when it comes to claim the sovereignty of its own territory? Or does it mean that this country should work out with some of the other countries? This is crucial because is it about whose voices is bigger? Is truth always lie in whose voices is bigger, whose numbers are the biggest? Or the truth lies in history, in the rule of law, in the bits and pieces of information that we should gather from our history?
There are some larger forces at work. Before 2009, these maritime delimitation issues in the South China Sea or East China Sea were dormant for over 50 years after the end of World War II. Nobody really paid much attention. There were some tensions, but this recent escalation, we need to understand more what really happened in 2009 and all these accusations of China being assertive. And then the second part of my answer is, what I don't quite understand is that if you look at the South China Sea, you look at East China Sea, you have some minor incidents. People talk about freedom of navigation, freedom of overflights, and we don't really have many actual incidents, actual problems. But then what's going on? There is that requires some serious analysis.
That certainly requires a lot of serious analysis. What are going on, in fact, in national politics, and what is really behind all of the recent flare-ups? Well, we'll have many more times to discuss those, but we want to thank both of you gentlemen for coming over and help to analyze the legal situation. Professor Zhang Daojun and also Professor Li Zhangjie, thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for watching. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing.